the first thing that you're going to need to do is find a photo of yourself. You can find a photo that you've taken on your phone. Preferably needs to be a full-length photo. It can have an animal in it or another person in it, but you don't really want to have yourself chopped off at the knees. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to need to zoom in and recall your selection tools. We have 3 different types of lasso. I'm going to start with the magnetic lasso, and I am going to do a quick selection around me. And remember that it's going to make points on its own, but if it's not following what I think it should, I can click and add anchor points myself. And whoops. And that's the problem with the magnetic lasso tool, because I need to zoom out and go around. And I'm going to wind up needing to use my quick mask tool. When I'm done, so that I can fine-tune it. But you can see how this is working. You don't have to watch the entire thing. You need to wind up with a good selection. And if you need to use the camera, you can do that. All right, so there's my initial selection, and then I'm going to go into quick mask mode. This is where I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to show you a quick reminder, and then I'm going to press pause so I can move on my own. I'm going to need my brush tool right here, and depending on the size, oops, opacity, whoops, oh, that's not what I meant. My mouse is not cooperating with me. All right, so with the black, I am, there we go. I am adding red to my selection. Maybe I need to open and reset my brush panel. If your brush is doing weird things, that's why. That's the first thing that you should do. And you can, of course, reset brush like that too. All right, so now I'm there. Now I should be able to get the brush strokes that I'm wanting. Okay, so again, I'm zooming in. And I can come in here and get rid of, oh, Lord have mercy, no spacing. There we go. And get rid of any of the background like such, okay? And then you use white to get rid of the red when it has not selected enough. Okay, so you're going to have to spend, this is going to be time consuming. Part of it depends on how your photo is, but I'm going to have to spend some time on mine. So I would go ahead and press pause on the video and come back at the end, and you can see where I am with mine. Okay, so now I've made my selection, I've exited my quick mask mode, and I just give it a double check, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job on it. To be safe, And also because you may want to use this photo again for something, I'm going to go ahead and save my selection, and I'll call it me and dog. And that saves the selection so that if I open the Photoshop file again, it will be there. Okay. Now, however, what I want to do is I want to copy and paste, and it's going to put it on a new layer, just like that. Okay. So on this new layer, I'm going to leave that be for a second, but I'm going to go ahead and do a file save as, and I would, in your OneDrive Photoshop folder, there we go, OneDrive Photoshop folder, I would just call it, you can call it yourself, so I'll call it Kristen Selection. And then you're ready to use this selection on the next part of your project. So go ahead and keep that open, and let's create a new file. And this new file is going to be, first off, make sure you have pixels selected before you put in the numbers. 1000 by 1000. And the resolution is actually going to go down on this. It's going to be 72 pixels per inch. And we want a black background color. And then we want to hit create. So the first thing I want you to do is double click on that background layer and go ahead and name it globe. Okay, so I realize that right now we have absolutely nothing on our page except for a black background. We're going to start off by adding a lens flare, and we're going to do that through the filter menu. Scroll down to render and choose lens flare. On your lens flare, you need to set your brightness at 75%. And then the lens type, you're going to choose 50 to 300 millimeter zoom and click OK. Then you're going to go back up to the filter menu, okay, because it's created a lens flare, but we have to do some other stuff to it. So we're going to go to filter and distort and polar coordinates. And what we want to do here is choose polar to rectangular, and that's going to put kind of a odd thing up at the top of the page. And so we actually want to move it to the bottom, and so we're going to go to edit, transform, flip vertical, and now it's down there. Then we're going to go back up to the filter menu, distort, polar coordinates, and now we choose rectangular to polar. And now we have a globe on our page that has lens flare in it. Okay, so right now we don't, the green in the background here looks a little odd. So we're going to use our magic wand, setting the tolerance at 50. And if we have the contiguous unchecked, it should select all of it, except for its selected part of the globe. So I have to deselect. I'm going to have to check contiguous, and I click, and if I got it all in one click. If you didn't, know that you might have to use the add to selection over here that my mouse is on right now and click again. Then I'm going to go ahead and go to the inverse select menu and choose inverse. And then I'm going to go to the select menu and I'm going to save my selection. Just like I did with my cutout, I'm going to do that here and I'm going to call that globe. That way I can use that over and over again. Now at this point I want to do a quick save just to make sure that we don't lose things. And again, this should go in your OneDrive, your Photoshop folder, and go ahead and call this your period number, your last name, and Snowglobe. okay? And it is a Photoshop file. Okay, so now we're going to copy and paste this globe into a new layer. And obviously, you know, you could do Command-C, Command-V. However, we have a quicker way, and that is Control-J. Control-J will simply copy and paste all in one step into a new layer. Now, I want to create another new layer that is going to be in between those two, okay? And this new layer we want to fill with black. So if you have black as your foreground color, you can do, Alt, Delete, and it fills with your foreground color, okay? Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to need our Channels panel. Remember, all your panels are under Window. And under Channels, notice that there is a little circle down here that has the dotted lines. Actually kind of reminds you of the marching ants. If you hover over it, it says Load Channel as Selection. So I'm going to click on it, and now notice that there is a selection right here. So I'm going to go back to my Layers panel, and at the top I'm going to add a new layer. And this new layer I'm going to go ahead and call Highlights. And I have white right now as my background color. So foreground is black, background is white. If yours is not, you can click on this in order to get it. And with that selection being made, I am going to Control Delete 3 times. So 1, and you can see it highlighting, 2, a second time, and 3, a third time. And now with the highlights, we can deselect that little piece with a Control D. And let's go ahead and do a quick save. And we can do that with Control S, or of course you can go up to the File menu. Okay, so now go back to the image that you made a selection on earlier. And you'll recall that you copied and pasted it into a new layer. So I am going to duplicate that layer and make it go into the snow globe. And so here it is. I'm going to drag it below the highlights layer, and I am going to move it and resize it until it fits inside my globe appropriately. Don't make it too big though, because if you make it too big, you are going to wind up having it cut off a little bit. So when you transform, it's going to be easier if you leave it small, and we can make it bigger after we distort it. If you haven't already, make sure that you hide the eyeball on these 2 globe layers here so that all you see is you behind the glass globe. Okay? All right, so now you're on your layer. You're going to go up to the Filter menu and choose Lens Correction. You're going to come over here to Custom. And in this first blank, we're going to choose -40. Now notice how it kind of balloons up, and it also distorts it so that it's a little bit round. Okay, so now what I want to do is transform this again to make sure that it fits inside the globe. And please make sure that when you are transforming, that you are indeed holding the Shift key or using this lock aspect ratio, because you do not want to make yourself look like this. Okay? Make sure you're holding down the Shift key. So I'm going to apply that, and let's go ahead and save, and then you can move on to the next video.